So good afternoon, everyone. I think people are still joining us. We'll just wait for 1 minute before we begin. Okay. I think we are okay to start with now. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Avanti Deshpande, part of the membership engagement team at NASSCOM Mumbai. I, along with my team, welcome you all to this webinar. In recent years, the practice of DevOps has become increasingly popular in software development, with organizations looking to achieve faster time to market and improved quality. Through continuous integration, delivery, and deployment, it is very necessary that we pick up the DevOps practices. However, in order to achieve these goals, testing must also be integrated seamlessly into the DevOps environment, including this webinar will explore the key concepts of testing in a DevOps environment. Now, for today, we are going to look at the various benefits of testing in a continuous environment and how do we do that into a DevOps pipeline. Whether you are a developer or a tester or a leader, this webinar will provide you valuable insights into how to optimize your testing efforts in the DevOps context. So today we have with us two eminent speakers who will help us to explore the strategies for testing in the DevOps era. So please join me in welcoming our esteemed panel for today. We have with us Madhavi Sampat. She is the QA COE head and AVP delivery at Xoriant. And Neeraj Kumar, he is the head of quality model office at Adrosonic. So before we begin, I would request each of the panelists to please tell us more about yourselves. So Madhavi, if we could begin with you, could you let us know something more about you?
Thank you, Avanti, giving me opportunity to discuss this in panel. Okay, so hi friends, I'm Madhavi Sampat, head of QA COE at Xoriant. I have more than 2 decades of rich IT experience, and I have a background in software development, providing test automation solution and defining test strategies of complex problems, primarily in the BFSI area. I'm passionate about taking QA fraternity to the next level and constantly strive to enhance the product quality through the innovation and best practices. When I'm not working, I enjoy playing badminton. That's all about me.
Great. Thanks, Madhavi. Neeraj, could we hear from you?
Sure. Thank you, Avanti and NASSCOM, for organizing this, first of all. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone who has joined from different geographies. I'm Neeraj Kumar, Head of Quality Model Office in Adrosonic. I'm responsible for quality model governance and delivery, establishing quality engineering best practices, and optimizing delivery efficiency, and overall providing value and return on investment for our services delivery to our customers. I have around 16 years of experience in IT industry, majorly within quality engineering and assurance services space. I have worked in key geographies like UK, US, India, and APEC regions, and have been associated with Adrosonic from 9+ years. Key domains where I worked is insurance, telecom business support systems, and social sector. And I have graduated from BIT in 2007 in mechanical engineering and completed my senior management program from IIM Ahmedabad in 2020. If I am not working, majorly I read books and I explore new and niche technologies which are emerging. That's pretty much about me.
Great. Thank you, Neeraj. So with so much experience with us today, let me get to the first question of the day. So I will be also moderating this webinar. So I'm going to put questions to these esteemed panelists, and they are going to help us answer all the mysteries of testing in DevOps, right? So Madhavi, let me take you to the first question. Going to the basics, just to set a context. If you could quickly tell us, what is the role of testing in a DevOps environment?
It's actually an essential component on the overall DevOps process. Okay, in the DevOps, if you see overall, we start with the planning and then we go for the deployment. Overall, testers nowadays have no called as a SDET or typical functional expert. But now the things have changed and the role has also changed. And now they have become QA ops, which we call it as a DevOps embedded QA guys. Now, these guys overall have to think about beyond their automation work and play a role overall in terms of a DevOps integration, where they have to think about early releases. They have to think about enhancing their user experience. They have to think about how the deployment, various different styles of deployments happens. So the role overall is emerging and the expectation has increased. And they have to go with a cycle of plan, automate, package, test, trigger, execute, release, and report. If we go with this cycle and play a different role, they have a multiple responsibilities in terms of how a delivery can happen, faster way, reliable way, and also in terms of a quality. Overall, the coverage is been managed. Now they have to think about a different tool also for that. And for all this perspective, now expectation from QA with collaboration of, you can say, a DevOps has increased.
Right. Yes. So that sets a direction for us. Thanks, Madhavi, for that. So Neeraj, coming to you, now that we understand the role of testing, could you throw some light on how does testing differ in a DevOps environment compared to the traditional software development?
Sure. So if I take the 3 key objectives of implementing a DevOps process, basically it's like enabling the organizational ability to deliver fast with high quality. Now there are 3 key objectives. First is basically you need to deliver with high quality. It should be reliable and it should meet the customer expectations. Now, if I start identifying the key point differences, then we are starting testing quite early in the cycle. So basically, we have moved towards shift left approach. Previously, if we talk about traditional development software process, then it's more siloed approach or more centralized approach. But here we are integrated or embedded into the entire DevOps pipeline or the environment. So right from continuous integration, if we call out, then we have sanity pack, smoke test pack, which supports the quality of the build, which development team is bringing on the table. When it moves to the continuous deployment process into the integration or main branch environments, then basically, again, that is supported by the larger packs of automation. And as it moves along to the subsequent control environments like QA or staging or production, then again, there is a separate wider test automation pack. So if we see, basically QA is now having more responsibility across the, I would say, SDLC process within the DevOps, which was not there with the traditional software. You had the entire development being done in a phased manner, and then it used to give it to the QA, and then you have your own cycle, and wherein you run your own automation pack in a siloed approach again. So now the second key difference is basically, I would say, continuous testing versus the phased approach. So now we are more doing the continuous testing to identify the issues early in the cycle. The third key difference would be the automation versus the manual aspects. So if we talk about the DevOps and if we have to deliver fast, basically you need to support it or back up with your automation coverage, which should be good enough to give confidence to all the stakeholders involved. And if we talk about the traditional process, then it was more manual driven, wherein you have the kind of specific pack, generally regression you will be automating, but now you are automating your unit test, integration, your end-to-end test. There are different set of tests, and then supported by performance and security test as well, which evolves within the cycle. And lastly, if I have to specify, then we have moved into more collaborative approach of testing rather than more centralized approach. So we are coordinating with all the key stakeholders, whether it's development team, business team, operations team, bringing all together, sharing the feedback and identifying issues early and also resolving them as well. But in the traditional approach, pretty much it was more centralized. You're doing your work, giving it back to the development, and then they will do their work and again pass it on to you. So I think these are some of the key differences which we have seen. With DevOps, basically, we have moved both shift left and also we have covered operations. So we have covered shift right as well, I would say, in a nutshell.
Yeah, great, thanks. So yes, we know that the roles are merging now. It is becoming more of a collaborative environment. So yes, thank you for that. So Madhavi, if I come back to you, what are the benefits do you think of incorporating testing into a DevOps pipeline as such?
Many
standalone.
Yeah, there are many benefits, but I'll talk about 4-5 top benefits.
Sure.
I feel that every tester should be thinking about. The very first benefit is that your quality is improved. Your releases cycle perspective have become faster. You are doing a better collaboration. Your confidence level on your release, on your product has increased, and that has led to a better customer satisfaction. You also get overall a better risk management. Your risk management system become better because you're getting into a collaborative mode. You are actually getting lots of continuous feedback because you're actually talking to multiple stakeholders. Now, how we achieve the early detection of defect? Because we are actually doing unit testing or your validation, not just at a development stage, from starting from the planning stage. And over there, you're doing the test approach, strategy, planning, and then actually thinking about how the automation should start from unit testing till your deployment. So your entire CI/CD plan is thought on a very early stage, and because of that, you are actually released to the, forget about the production, to the QA also has increased. Your environment has created in such a faster rate that overall your different type of environments are getting ready on a click, because you have a containerization and so on. And because you have a faster release cycle, you can actually measure your efficiency. You can actually measure your cycle time, you can measure lead time, deployment frequency, mean time to recovery, and so on. So this overall has given lots of confidence, not just to the QA, but the entire delivery management, so that your release cycle has now come to not just 3 months, 1 month, it has come to 1 day. And for that, we have to think about a tester has to think about lots of deployment strategy. But the benefit is that overall deployment, you can say, area has covered because of this quality insurance. Then I should be thinking about a better risk management. For example, using the tool called AWS disaster recovery or Azure site recovery. These tools help us actually to think about how you can manage the disaster at a DevOps level also. Then finally, the continuous feedback. The continuous feedback from entire engineering stakeholder help us actually to get lots of benefit.
Great, great. Thanks, Madhavi. Neeraj, would you like to add anything? Or
Yeah, I think the key benefits already called out, but I see there are some of the key metrics as well, which we generally follow, is like mean time to detect a defect. So if I talk about that, which was previously, it has to wait the entire dev cycle to complete, which is like taking 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It has now turned down to almost 1 to 2 days. We are able to identify the issues within the release. So that has given a lot of confidence to the stakeholders that we can deliver faster to the production. So definitely it's a lot of efficiency has been done. Like if I have to push a fix to a production, mean time to resolve a fix, if I have to say, which was taking, let's say, 1 month or 3 months to get into the production, it has now turned down into 1 day. We can just go into the faster pace with the help of automation. So some of the efficiencies which we are continuously monitoring within Adrosonic, we have observed those are really helping us out and to our customers as well. So yeah, I think there's a lot of key benefits coming out. And I think in addition to that, if I have to quote, then we have also observed that almost DevOps process with the right approach of coverage has reduced the rework of development team by almost 30 to in range of 50%, I would say, per release, because we are identifying the defects early in the cycle. So a lot of key benefits coming out.
great, great. So as we can see, all roads lead to GTM, the go-to-market, faster release cycles, and reach the customer first and achieve customer delight. So those are the benefits. So this is all fine when we're talking about ideal situations, but I'm sure there will be challenges when you're implementing this. So would you like to talk a little bit about the challenges also, Neeraj?
Sure.
Because,
So yeah, definitely. When we implement such processes, there is a lot to be thought through. And if we don't do it well, then definitely there are going to be certain key challenges. I think one of the key, I would say, differentiator between the process, if we are implementing it right, is how well our DevOps expected to be processes documented. Because if you know the problem statement well, you can find out the key barriers which is impacting you to, reduce your delivery time, cycle time, and all, which generally, people directly jump into the tools and move ahead with the DevOps process. Then that would result into different level of impacts. But I think there should be a well-documented process which will enable the team to implement all the key components in the bigger picture quite well. Second, I believe, is also the selection of the automation tools which can fit well into the DevOps pipeline. So that means you identify the test, the application, the frequency which you're going to deliver, what kind of coverage you're looking forward to, and then do the right analysis between the open source and the scriptless low-code automation tools which are available to support DevOps, and identify the right tool, integrate it well. And I think the other challenges which we have seen is like maintenance of the automation scripts and the version control, how it is being taken care of. As the releases are shortening, the cycle time has also shortened for the testing window. So basically, if you are not updating and maintaining your scripts well and it's not version control, then eventually it's going to impact and you won't be able to identify the right set of defects as well within the, I would say, testing cycle. So those are quite key factors. Apart from that, with DevOps getting implemented and the digital and business transformation programs going along with all the customers, I think there is also a challenge of continuous learning, because with respect to new technologies, you also need to understand which tool will fit well. Not one solution will go across to all the customers or will go and address all the constraints within the any given DevOps environment. So we need to also keep evolving. The testing team also needs to evolve their skill set and knowledge. That's quite key. And overall, as a DevOps team, I think the other challenge which I have seen is identifying the right size of release delivery. That should be backed, scoped based on the trend of data, which is velocity, which tells you how much you can take it up. If you take more, then eventually, again, that will have a kind of a cascading impact. So I think these are some of the, I would say, key factors. And there are certain surveys which has clearly called out that maintenance and updation of the automation scripts really impacts quite a lot. And if you have taken care of the same, then pretty much you will be able to address the key issues.
Yeah, probably there again, we begin the debate on licenses versus codeless versus scriptless. So we'll get to that. I would like Madhavi's take on the challenges a little bit more. What do you think, Madhavi? What are the challenges?
I will add 2-3 challenges is very specific, which probably my team is also dealing with, especially the environment downtime. We face lots of time because of the application, because of the data, or simply the infrastructure is probably not properly managed. In that case, we have to work on the virtualization. We have to think about the tool which help us to actually application virtualization and so on. Now, this topic probably will has to get mapped, especially when the mobile deployment happens. And nowadays, how many application getting developed in mobile. So in that, you have to think about the typical challenge comes with the coverage. It comes with the complexity of the deployment. And the coverage also, all kind of OS coverage and so on. So for that, probably we need to think about emulators, simulators, and need to think about how I can actually do the automation very effectively, so that I actually have a very low code scripting and manage this via different utility. So these are the 2 areas which I think even my team is facing, but overall with this approach, this we'll be able to overcome.
Great. Also, the virtualization was a very good point. I think that can be implemented, but I know when there are bigger enterprises with many teams trying to integrate, where your end-to-end flow goes through a lot of applications, there it is a very good approach. And of course, it has its own challenges as well. So to continue on the topic of when you are talking about tools and automation. So what do you think are the strategies, or how we can integrate the automated testing tools with the DevOps pipeline? Yeah, what would be your strategy?
So over there, we have to be very careful in terms of selecting the tool, okay? Because there are multiple tools in the market, okay? There are lots of framework, there are lots of libraries in the tool, but you need to think about that, what suits for my culture, what suits for my technology, and have to have a bigger picture. You have to start with actually discussing the architecture, and then thinking about, for this architecture, whether I am thinking about Docker as a implementation or the Kubernetes for the implementation, because both has a pros and cons. So selecting a tool and having that clear mindset, because every day there is a new framework, there is a new library coming in the overall in the industry, and you have to actually manage and think that whether I should be using those all kind of variety. That's first. Then you need to think about your different integration with CI/CD tools. Okay, so whether you are now thinking about, for example, DevOps pipeline, we are thinking about Jenkins, you are thinking about GitLab, or the multiple integration tool, and you have to think this in the planning stage. You cannot think this after automation. You have to think very early. So this integration point is very, very important when it comes to a CI and CD. Okay, now let's talk about the code repository. Okay, now in code repository also there are multiple, you can say, patterns. Now let's assume we are going with a code analysis. Then you need to think about whether you are going for the Sonar Cube, you are going with the code climate, or many other tools. So that also you have to identify very early and make sure that it is there in your CI/CD. Whether you are using any ID utility and so on, that also you have to think when you actually start doing the development, because whenever you deliver every day the code to your next stage, it can be a QA, it can do a staging and so on. Your code quality has to be reviewed by your own utility and the tool. And for that, you have to use certain AI, you have to use certain plugins, which normally comes with the ID. So you have to keep watching those plugins and which best suits for your entire architecture. Then I will talk about test management tool integration. And we know, like, for example, TestRail, we know Zephyr, we know Qtest, and so on. So there are many integrations. So you need to think about bi-direction traceability also. And those tools has to have, you can say, all connection till your deployment. So we have to choose a best suited test management tool. Then I will talk about test automation. Now, over there also, at least 15 libraries, frameworks are there. Selenium, Cypress, APM, then Karate, and so on, Playwright, and so on. Now, you have to be very clear whether I'm executing on a multiple browser, whether I'm using doing the headless execution, and so on. And based on that, you have to actually think about a right library for the automation. Over there also, low code kind of intelligence is also there. So whether you need to build those, and for that, how your CI/CD pipeline is ready. Okay. Then the last thing, integration perspective, is the security testing tool integration. How your vulnerability is tested, how your code, each code changes has been taken care. So there are certain compliance also. For example, OSWAP kind of tool, or burp site kind of tool, and so on. So you have to think those kind security testing perspective integration also. So these are the integration, different phase wise, you can say, need. And then finally, you have to think about your environment integration. So when it comes to environment, you might need a different environment for your faster release. And for that, whether your all taste data creation tool and your internal harness and everything is all integrated to the environment. Those things you need to think. You need to think while doing the integration.
Great, thanks. So what you're recommending is basically the planning and design has to happen before the actual implementation happens. Yes. You have to select the tools as per what your applications are being tested. We have to make sure that we have a security component also built into your DevOps, which makes it DevSecOps, I guess, right? Right, great.
And so Avanti, we have to think about continuous monitoring. We have to keep monitoring whatever the outcome is coming via this automation. We cannot fix our approach. We cannot say that, okay, now I've decided my CI/CD plan this way. We have to keep revisiting that, whether benefits are coming rightly, the effectiveness coming or something. And based on that, we have to go with the risk-based model. We cannot afford too much of testing also.
Absolutely. Correct. Right. Thank you. Neeraj, your take on how to integrate testing tools?
If I have to say, I think because we talk quite a lot for collaboration in DevOps, I think it's important that the entire tool chain should be evaluated, where we bring all the stakeholders together. Taking an example of Microsoft Azure DevOps, it gives a platform for having all your backlog requirements, your entire development, branching strategy and approach, your entire release management, pipeline, then your test management, and then it's well integrated with your automation tools. If you're going for, let's say, UI-based automation, then let's say UiPath Test Suite. For API, it could be Ready API, Postman. And then for continuous monitoring, let's say we were talking about, so might be Stackify or Relic, New Relic, those can get integrated as well with your performance approach. So I think the key is tool selection is very important because it can make or break your path of optimal testing and DevOps plan. The planning is really important, but I think the tool which can be collaborated well with all the stakeholders, bring everyone together so that there is a real-time visibility on the quality, how we are progressing across each of the DevOps phase. I think that's quite key. That's why I think the identification of the testing needs, what kind of application we are testing. Also, if we talk about automation pyramid, then which area to focus more, whether it's going to be my unit test, integration test, regression, or acceptance. We identify those patterns, identify which tools may well fit in to collaborate better, and then we take a call based on our cost benefit analysis and all. We configure the tools and then we start utilizing the same. I think it's key that if anyone is onboarding into this journey, then set a template right for the entire tool chain between the team, build some of the happy path, and then you move and expand further to the test so that you can then ensure that everything is linked together and working effectively in the entire tool chain. So I think, yeah, for me, I would say a collaborative tool which can bring everyone on the same platform and can be well integrated with the industry standard, supporting automation coverage for continuous monitoring, logging, UI, API, unit test, and all. I think that would be the right fit.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Neeraj. So we do have a couple of questions from our audience. Let me take one of them. So the question is, for big monolithic ERP application, what tools can really help in test automation overall? So Neeraj, if you could take that, and maybe Madhavi later on you can add. Yeah.
Okay, if I talk about monolithic ERP application, then first of all, you have to identify the right set of tools which can work on those such kind of platforms. Might be low code, I would say, because if you're going to build a test automation approach and design a new framework, you might have to build multiple components if it is monolithic, and also depending on the components or modules those platforms sustain. So I think in such cases, depending on the use case, I would suggest might be a low code automation tool would be key, because it can save you might be 100 to 200% days of efforts just in the framework setup itself. Also, you need to think what is your skill set of the team who needs to ramp up and support the test automation as well. So I think with that approach, you can scale your team in a quick span and start delivering. Again, there is a limitation as well. When we talk about, certain applications which are on monolithic or on old technology, outdated technology and architecture, might be DevOps is not the right answer for those such cases, because then you will hit a, hard wall. Because if you are trying to change too much, which is on outdated technology, which is not supported by the latest DevOps approach, where you are going to deliver every day or might be at the end of every month, every sprint, there are certain challenges with respect to that. So if you're talking just for the test automation, then definitely I would suggest low-code automation tool would be the right thing to start with.
Thanks, Neeraj. Madhavi, you want to add anything or?
So I will suggest you to go with a feasibility study. Okay, you have to check whether that technology is supported with the framework which you wanted to use it. And I support Neeraj when he says the skills kit, because when it comes to a particular framework or a particular language, okay, normally it is a combination, correct? The framework and the language, correct? You have to make sure that your team knows that the framework or the library which has been used. So there is not a particular answer over here, but I've seen lots of open. So I'll divide this into three areas. One is an open source library where Selenium typically works for this ERP. I've been working on multiple ERP. And, Selenium is fairly enough. You can say 80% solution for that. But if you want to go for advanced, okay, advanced kind of you can say libraries and all, then and also the paid and all, then Cathlon and these kind of tools actually work it out. If we want to go for a no-code kind of solution, then we need to really think about which actually AI or intelligence actually provide that kind of solution. Here, I will suggest you do a proper feasibility study so that your entire, you can say object or your entire testing approach is satisfied.
Yeah, thanks, Madhavi. So there's one more question I'd like you to take, which is, how should we approach for security and performance tests within DevOps?
Okay, so I'll first take performance testing. Okay, so performance testing you typically do with 4-5 known industry tools, JMeter, Dynatrace, and so on, correct? Load runner and so on. Now, all these things has to actually get deployed on your, again, I will categorize this pattern into your deployment structure. Okay, whether you are doing a SaaS-based deployment, whether different deployment, you can say infrastructure base and so on happening. So based on that, you have to actually think about what is your strategy on the containerization. And then based on that, you have to define your performance environment. You have to map that with your NFR requirement. And then you have to see how your CI/CD is been achieved for that. For example, performance engineering typically happens on reactive basis. If you are targeting proactive basis, then you have to make sure that after every build, your performance script are executed in your performance lab, and your pass rate is 100% so that it goes to our next stage. So that's where the performance testing is been managed. Now coming to security, again, you have to identify the right tool. We typically do a security little later, but I'm talking about day-and-day coding perspective. So there are lots of code plugin. You can use small IDE plugin for that, okay, and do a normal code check for a security perspective. Okay, so for example, you can use Sonar, okay, just to check the vulnerability. There are complex and advanced security testing, which I feel you should be doing in a separate environment, integrated for your final build. So that's the way you should be taking care of performance and security.
So for security, we're recommending static testing as part of one of the tasks.
As a normal developer, I'm talking, which
Absolutely.
is mapping to a early.
Makes sense.
If I want to do advanced, then probably you have to
that
do
should be in a later stage. Yes. Correct. Thanks. Neeraj, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think just to add, there are, like, if we are talking about DevSecOps as well. Now, if I talk about performance, the first thing is like you need to have the right NFRs and right set of tools and environments, because I think, again, Madhavi called out that environment should be rightly structured, because generally the performance has been more reactive, but now we are calling it has to be in a more shift left approach. Then your tools should be there, your right set of Dockers containers where you can test within the given set of framework. It should allow you. So I think the tool selection is also really important with the right set of NFRs. Your SLA should be well defined in advance to start with the shift left approach. Otherwise, again, it is generally done quite late in the phase and it doesn't support to move towards shift left. So again, that has to be taken care of. Tools like we have generally seen tools like Neoload and all is also, and the other tools which were called out really supports in the shift left approach, which we can still plan out. So I think that's one of the thing, and generally it should be performance by design. So ideally, not just the testing team's responsibility is, because when we call about DevOps, then it also passes the responsibility is shared. So even the development should follow the industry standard best practices for performance, which is again evaluated. There are other tools which can check your code and say, okay, where do you need to do the optimization as well. So performance by design really helps you in the DevOps kind of framework and approach. If I talk about security, then I think we were already talking about static. So there are like two different categories. We can have SAST and DAST-based tools. So it's like static application security testing. And then when we go into the more in-depth and dynamic application security testing tools comes in the picture. Now, there are certain things which is at the development level itself you can do, which are like supported by SAST-based tools. And if you want to do in-depth security testing, which is more in during the test phase, then of course the dynamic application security testing tools will enable you to plug those tests within the pipeline so that you can support that.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Neeraj. So while other questions are coming in, I would like to ask one more question myself, which is, moving on a little bit. So how can the testing teams ensure that testing is not overlooked or undervalued in a DevOps environment? Because we see that in the DevOps environment, people really want to move on with the release cycle. They want to quickly put in fixes. They want to quickly make the application live. So how do testing teams ensure that testing is not overlooked or undervalued in a DevOps environment? So Neeraj, your take on this.
Okay, first of all, if I have to say, I feel proud. DevOps has actually elevated the role of QA to a strategic level, because what we are talking overall as an objective of DevOps is the high quality, high reliable software going to production. That means there is an opportunity of ownership and growth within the team, and basically to play the role of quality coach, if I have to say, because the rest of the team members are coming from a different skill set. With as a testing team member, you can collaborate well and take a quite big ownership role over here. Apart from that, I think with the approach of automation coverage, identifying the defects early, contributing towards the faster release cycle, basically you are giving the the required metrics to the management, how testing team is enabling business performance metrics as well, because we are able to deliver any new service in production, which will eventually help business in their marketing positioning or market share earnings, whatever it is. At the same time, with the right set of testing within the DevOps environment is actually increasing the customer satisfaction as well, because you're validating the key changes and able to deliver it more sooner than what it was happening before. So I think these are some of the key factors which actually is elevating the role. And also, I believe one of the key factor is having certain key quality dashboards, basically, which brings everyone on the same platform in the real time where we stand, because that is how you can, you will not be undervalued or overlooked. Basically, it will give a kind of a visibility to everyone how the things are progressing, and then you can take the right calls as well. If I talk about certain key reports, then recently there was a report from World Quality report which published, and it was clearly called out that almost 59% of the organization believes that with the testing focus, they're able to improve the quality which is getting delivered. And similarly, we have observed within Adrosonic as well, based on the data trends which we publish on the quarterly basis. So I don't think testing is getting undervalued or overlooked, but I think it's important that we keep the positioning very clear, and that is driven based on the facts about automation coverage, the quality of defects which we identify, and also ensuring that we are delivering more to the business and more sooner we are enabling the services as well.
Right. Thank you, Neeraj. Madhavi, would you like to add anything?
I'd like to add one point is that ensuring testing is a part of the DevOps culture. Typical testers think that, okay, my job is just to do the validation. No, he has to go beyond that. He has to promote the collaboration. He has to promote the continuous integration, continuous delivery. For that, he has to understand what is their plan. DevOps, the CI/CD doesn't happen from day zero. It has to. It's a very strategic approach, and it has actually happens on the level wise, level 1, 2, 3, 4. And for that, tester has to understand what is coming next. And for that, the person who is doing automation has to be ready. For example, if the automation engineer is developing a framework which is not getting integrated on Docker or on a headless browser, how the collaboration will happen? So they have to actually think about the culture which DevOps is having. For that, they have to connect with them. A typical tester gets connected with the product manager and the developer, but they actually overlook the DevOps part, which they should be starting. And if they do it, the better the benefit.
Great. Thanks. So with that, I come to my next question. So what are the basically best practices for testing in a DevOps pipeline to make sure that, the testing is taken care of? So Madhavi, if you could add something. Yeah. Best practices.
We talk about early release, and also I'll not cover those perspectives. I'll cover little specific perspective. For example, test automation, I feel that parallel testing, which help us to do a test execution faster, for the faster, which at the end getting mapping to the faster release. So parallel testing, which typical test automation engineer ignores. running the execution on headless browser so that your execution becomes faster. So these are the key attribute any automation, you can say framework developer or engineer has to think about, that they are not just validating the screen or the APIs or the mobile screen. They have to think that how faster I can deliver my outcome. The execution is their outcome. Now coming to, for example, mobile testing, they have to think about whether I can think about having my own device farm, whether I should be doing my testing on real device, simulator, and probably the cloud farm. So whether I should be having that combination. For that combination, whether my DevOps strategy is ready, whether I have informed my DevOps guy that this kind of set of code or this kind of set of feature has to get executed on real device. I cannot do probably a gaming kind of testing on the simulation. For that, I need switch my angle of mobile. So all this who will inform DevOps? They don't know. They don't know the feature. This all input has to go from testing, and that collaboration has to happen. So they have to actually come with a device farm strategy, whether I'm going with the cloud farm, whether I'm, so they have to actually divide these kind of feature should be done on the cloud. These kind of feature has to happen on the emulator to save my costing of the device. These kind of feature has to happen on my real device. So all this aspect should be covered in the best practice. So net they have to communicate back. Everybody, they have to understand the roadmap and then communicate back to the DevOps. So then the third thing is that they have to learn what is DevOps giving them as an infrastructure. What kind of infrastructure, what kind of environment I'm going to get in what stages. What is the quality of that environment is going to come to me. For that, they have to build probably environment health checkup. They have to think about a different virtualization approach, simulation approach, and so on. So I normally recommend virtualization, especially when you have a complex application environment, so that you are not dependent on releases. You are actually independent to sit, actually see and test the application which you are supposed to deliver for the next phase. Then they have to think about how I'm using the cloud service very effectively, because there are multiple services which is there as a package, but we do not explore because probably a limited knowledge, limited thought process, and so on. So they have to think about what are the different tools and services available for my ecosystem. At the end, if I want to summarize what a QA ops best practice, then they have to think about early testing, improving the test coverage. They have to keep checking the cost of quality. They have to keep calculating the ROI. They have to think whether I'm actually having the best ROI. They have to think, or they have to reduce or monitor the leakage each stages wise. And they have to think about reducing the maintenance also, because every time you're doing the automation, there is a chances of also the maintenance. So you have to think about how do I reduce that maintenance. Then you have to think about monitoring a different log, starting from dev logs, ending to the production logs. At the end, you have to collaborate entire, you can say the stuff which I spoke 2 minutes back, so that you achieve the best QA DevOps culture.
Great. Thanks, Madhavi. Neeraj, your 10 cents on the best practices.
Yeah, I think the key is having the right strategy in place, especially the testing strategy, which should, I would say, cover all the key spheres, whether I talk about continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous delivery, continuous monitoring. And within that, I think all the key success criteria and KPI should be called out and agreed as a team, what we will keep monitoring and evaluate whether we are achieving those objectives or not. I think that should be the first step. Apart from that, I think from the other key best practices are the automation test coverage and test suite. Because it is also important what to automate and how much to automate. If you go with 100% automation, that might not actually help you to achieve the ROI as well. So I think that should be also called out and should be maintained very effectively within the team. The third is, I would say, regular review of the test coverage pack as well, which you have to support your DevOps pipeline, because eventually the business will rely on DevOps and on automation only when they see that the reports which are giving is giving them the confidence as well that it has enough coverage. So that should be, I would say, regularly maintained and tracked. Apart from that, I think manual testing is also a key part within the best practice of DevOps. I know it's bit traditional, it sounds, but yeah, if I talk about user experience based test or exploratory test or business complex scenarios based testing, now that aesthetic touch can't be brought by the automation. So there is some level of exploratory testing should be embedded within the DevOps testing strategy as well. I think that's quite key. And apart from that, I think rightly called out, the code quality has to be maintained, because eventually when you are scaling or adding further work streams within your DevOps pipeline and overall approach, then code quality is something which will help you to kind of maintain the entire pack with less effort. So that has to be taken care of. And of course, at the end, I would suggest that whatever the test runs, anyone is doing, the data trends has to be monitored, because that gives you a kind of a trend where to focus and how much to improve as well. So I think that is also quite key as a best practice overall, if I have to summarize.
Great, thanks. So I will get back to the questions because I think they are lining up a lot of questions. So let me take a few from them again. So Neeraj, since you touched upon it, what are the automation metrics that should be monitored in the automation projects? Any tools to monitor automation metrics? That's the
Okay,
question. Yeah.
there are multiple, I would say. The first is, of course, the automation coverage ratio with respect to your overall regression pack, UAT pack, or, then it could be based on different automation pyramid, unit test, what coverage it is, integration test, what coverage it brings, then your defect leakage prevention. So based on the automation test, how much defects is being identified in each of the cycles. So the more you are, the defects are escaping from your initial phases to the next phase, you need to keep monitoring. And based on the data trends, ideally, you should start seeing that your defect leakage prevention should more reach towards 100%. So I think that also gives you the confidence and the business the confidence on the test coverage, on the automation coverage as well. Apart from that, how many deployments we are doing at certain frequency intervals, because more deployments we are doing as a team, that means we are collaborating better and it's more stable, and we are able to add more kind of services, I would say, value to the business as well. So deployment frequency is also quite key. The next one would be the deployment failure rate, because more number of deployments you are doing, and let's say it is not able to pass through your test pack, which is enabled to ensure that the whatever builds are coming, it's not failing or it's not impacting the overall application. So that change failure rate or deployment failure rate has you can improve upon that. I think these are some of the key metrics, I would say, which anyone should monitor, apart from the other, I would say, traditional metrics of test execution, coverage, defects. I would say the other trends which are monitored.
Great, thanks. Madhavi, you want to add anything?
Just one thing which is my favorite, and I keep telling off my all QA community, is that calculate return on investment, ROI. Because automation many times taken very technically, and they do not actually, since we want to cover a bigger coverage, we actually try to spend lots of efforts on complex automation, which probably not needed. You have to think about why I'm actually executing on 5 browser and not 1. You have to ask product manager that whether my product is using a 5 browser or not. So I think the ROI calculation is my favorite, and I keep recommending to all my QA engineer to think about on the costing. And similarly for the infrastructure also. Typically, this responsibility is given to a DevOps people and say that, okay, my DevOps will think about what is my Azure bill or AWS subscription and so on. So a tester now have to think about those aspects also.
That's a fresh perspective. So we'll go on to the next question. How can we integrate the security like OWASP in CI/CD pipeline? So do we not take it as a separate process after an application is built completely? You want to take it, Madhavi? Or should I read it again?
Yeah, because, yeah.
Okay. So how can we integrate the security like OWASP in CI/CD pipeline, so we do not take it as a separate process after an application is built completely? I think we touched upon this a little bit, but
yes,
maybe you can.
Yes, I think I have to repeat the same thing. It will be actually your. So now I exactly don't know what are the repository perspective of plugin. Okay, but they have to find out the right plugin. Okay, where your OSAP tool is automatically triggered. If you find that solution, I think you will be able to actually do the CI/CD in terms of security also. The way you're doing automation or way you're doing performance. So right plugin probably I don't know right now, but there might be something. So if you find your actually your branch repository and your security tool repository plugin, you will be able to find out. But that's the only way I could see it. And I'm talking about a basic tool security testing. There are lots of advanced testing. For that, I'll repeat, you have to have your environment.
Yeah, and I think on top of this, I believe the security scope has to be clearly called out, because based on the criticality of the application and the data you are exchanging, I think there are different levels of checks you will have to do. So based on identifying the right set of security or pen test penetration testing requirements, once you have identified those, then I think you can start plugging on, which we're talking about, the plugins and the tools within your initial code phase itself, which will tail from the static coverage itself where you are going wrong. And then, of course, the advanced tools like dynamic application security testing tools, those can be plugged in on the security test approach.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Neeraj. So I'll take up the next question. How DevOps is different for Agile? You want to take it, Neeraj, and then we'll go to Madhavi.
Okay, sorry, if you can repeat the question again, how DevOps
is different for Agile?
Okay, I think Agile, what we have seen is like, of course, you have a collection, you follow a sprint process, right? And then you have a development, you have a testing, and then you are doing your, set of deployment to the production. Now, it can range from one sprint to the multiple sprints we collect and then form a release, which can go live. Now, what happens generally is within the entire set of Agile process, you are more, I would say, driven based on your initial set of requirements, where ops team, I don't see very much plays a role within this entire structure. You have product owner, you have your Scrum team, development team, QA team. You work and give a build, which is then tested by the QA team. And later on, if it all works well, then it goes to the next stage, wherein your UAT or product owners, business users comes and, they validates, and then it's taken to the production, where your operations team again plays a key role over there. Now, over here, what we are saying is the requirement is validated as a team with the ops team as well. And when we are building the scripts, we are not just thinking about the UI tests or just API tests. We are also thinking from the operational tests as well. So let's say if there are certain utilities which is used by the ops team, then that has to be plugged in within the cycle itself, so that you are testing it now rather than in the production. If you have any kind of support mechanisms to track any kind of alerts, logs based on resources consumption, based on the releases, whatever requirements are, now those has to be tested within the given cycle itself. So there is a bit of a mind shift as well when we talk about DevOps than Agile, because Agile has this, I would say, on set of cycle which is being followed. Of course, automation again plays a key role in Agile as well if you have to deliver. But I think here the operational aspect, which was not there, has been brought in, which is quite key.
Great, great. I would normally say DevOps is more agile for Agile, but Madhavi, you want to add to what Neeraj said?
Okay, I'll answer with a different perspective. Okay, so Agile has also lots of definition, correct? It's a big ocean. Okay, now whether you have a 1 week sprint, you have a 2 week sprint. I have a customer who has 3 week sprint also, and they have a release of 3 months with a 8 sprint model, and their regression happens after 4 weeks. So see, it is all the perspective of Agile what you are actually implementing. The answer will be not straightforward. You have to think about what is the methodology you have implemented in your Agile model, okay, and how agile you are as a tester, okay, and based on that you have to think about how I'm actually thinking about early detection of defect, early deployment, faster release, and so on. And that, if you start mapping with your culture, you will be able to find actually they are not different, they are same only, but you have to mold your DevOps culture into the culture of Agile.
Great, perfect. Perfect. So I think thanks for that. So there are a couple of questions which are around what tools, what automation tools would be recommended for mobile application and web application. There is one question, and another question specifically asks, what is the right tool for e-commerce website in automation testing and UI testing? So I think some recommendation for web application testing, mobile application testing, UI testing, if you would like to recommend anything.
Yeah, so I'll take that.
Yeah.
Mobile perspective, there are multiple, okay? But my recommendation and my favorite is plain vanilla. I believe in simplicity, and that's Selenium APM. Okay.
Okay.
That you go with this combination, build your own framework and be happy. Okay, now you will tell me, Madhi, I have a complex feature. I want to test something which is video automation, audio automation, and those on. Then you have to put some efforts. Now, again, if you are have a no ROI, your ROI. Now you do think about ROI, correct? If your ROI is giving you good returns and benefit, go for a paid tool. Go for no normal tools. And now I'll not name those. But there are many. Choose any one of them based on your feasibility study. But my overall mobile perspective, always a recommendation is simple vanilla Selenium APM. I've been doing this for last 10 years, doing well. Now the second is web, correct?
Yes.
So the web, again, I believe in Selenium. Okay, I've been old age perspective where I've used IBM tool, I've used HP tools and so on. But I think last 10 years, 10, 12 years, I've seen Selenium doing good. If you are really low cost, you want to go with a simple solution, go for Selenium. But if you are really aggressive, you wanted to have a very good DevOps culture, and you are you feel that your returns are high, your product is complex, I will recommend a low code, no code kind of solution. Now, again, you will ask, Madhavi, tell me which tool. Okay, then if you are really aggressive and you feel your returns are high, there are lots of paid tool in the market. Choose any one of them. The challenge for those tools will be a dependency on the technology change. So you be ready for that. But if you are a good engineer and you have that AI mindset and so on, build your own. I will suggest build on your own.
I think from my perspective, there will be two approach. One is the right, I think feasibility analysis is quite key in such areas because there's plethora of tools around which can support each one of these. And also the business priority as well, how quickly you want to scale, you want to deliver, you want to ramp up the team. Then I would say, that is where your cost benefit analysis comes in the place. You do a proper analysis and then you go for the right set of tool. Because if you are kind of, you don't want to invest much, then of course might be Selenium is good. But in case if you want you want to achieve more within a quick span, then I think then you should start thinking from the cost or commercial based tools which can really support you quite well, and all are well integrated in the DevOps pipeline. So there is quite a lot in the list. But yeah, feasibility analysis and cost benefit analysis really helps in such decision making, what I have seen.
Correct.
Great, thanks. So we are, we've reached the clock, but I would ask if Madhavi and Neeraj, you guys have 5 or 10 minutes more. We have a few interesting questions. If you guys are okay, we can continue a little bit more.
Yes, why not?
Sure. All right, great. So this is a different type of question, but I think which should be answered is if someone has more exposure to manual stuff and now wants to move towards DevOps or automation or performance, then how can one think in that direction and get working exposure? And nowadays, how much important is it to gain knowledge in this direction? So maybe Madhavi, we can start with you.
Yeah. I think the simplest way is that at least don't get scared about code. Okay, it's not that big game. Okay, start doing simple coding. Okay, and then second is that start with the BDD actually. Okay, so Grunkin and all those languages are very easy, and no, it's when and all those kind of things. So start actually doing low code kind of automation or BDD kind of automation if possible in your project. Okay, if not possible and your project is already established and having, let's assume there are 2-3 languages, correct? Java, C#, Python, and so on, correct? I think the simplest I feel is a Python. So go with the Python if possible and start. I actually start swimming. That's the only solution. Don't get scared about the code. It's complex and all. You get into that shoes, you will do it. Believe me, nowadays there are lots of AI supported chat GPT and these kind of stuff, which will give you code in seconds. Okay. And there are lots of framework which is established, for example, karate framework, earlier robot framework and all, which is very easy. You just have to work on those those objects and do the validation. I don't think it's complex. It's just a mindset. Get into that shoes. That's all.
I think just to add on that, there are many, I would say, if you're just starting, if you have not been through in the automation experience, there are many community edition tools of, I would say, low code as well, which will enable you to at least understand the automation picture, what actually is automation. And if you want to start, you can start with the API based automation, which is quite simpler. And then you can move towards the UI as well, which is again supported by many, I would say, low code automation tools. And they are quite well established academy to support you in the learning journey as well with respect to some of the tools. So yeah, I think yeah, and if you want to explore more on the coding side and all, then of course you can go with, but to understand what automation is all about, how the things are structured, then of course there are many community editions, like, which are available to support in the learning journey.
Right, great. Thanks, Neeraj. So there was an additional ask in that question was how important is it to gain this knowledge? So I would definitely say that this is it. You have to get into it. There is no choice. You have to go for it, right?
Because next generation is coming now in the 5th, 6th standard. They are teaching Python. So your next actually generation coming learning all Python in their academics in school. I'm not talking about engineering.
So this is the way to go, basically, right? So that's where the next question is coming, and Neeraj, probably you can start with is, can DevOps seamlessly fit into shift everywhere culture?
Shift everywhere culture. Okay. I think first is to define the boundary, because see, if I talk about, there are certain limitations as well. DevOps is not the right answer for all the types of applications. So let's say for all the projects. So if I talk about highly regulated industries, let's say healthcare, government projects, or any other financial such projects where a lot of documentation, approval process, validations are required before anything goes to the production stage. Now, in such cases, might be shift everywhere will not work. But yeah, if you talk about web applications, building an integration layer where everything is dependent on APIs. So I think in such cases, yeah, I would say the answer is yes, it can fit well, because you can have your automation scripts created for the integration pack using the API suite. You can, as soon as your code is ready, or or your web services or whatever layers are there for the integration is ready, you can have your things integrated right from the development till the production. You don't have to just do till, I would say, staging in one, but in the production also you can run. So in such cases, of course, it will fit well. Also, you can have right set of application performance monitoring tools, which gives you all the set of, logs, alerts to be monitored, to be identified, to be analyzed, how things are being taken care of. And based on that, you can do the performance optimizations or resources restructuring on the infrastructure as well. So yeah, the answer would be not to be, it won't fit all the, I would say, scope, but yeah, in certain use cases, definitely it can fit well, like especially in the integration kind of project layers. I think it really suits well.
And thanks, Neeraj. Madhavi, your take?
So you have to judge this when you are in the planning stage. Okay, you have to think about your architecture. You have to think about whether my is a SaaS model or the infrastructure as a service model. So you have to think at a planning stage that how much DevOps you can do. And I normally suggest typical PD, the 5 level of implementation. So you start just focus on CI, okay? Then you focus on more on the faster environment creation, more focus on the giving customized environment within seconds and so on. So all those aspects come with the stages. It doesn't come on a day one. The planning has to happen on day one, but the implementation happens on implementation typically takes time. Now, all those stuff you will come to know when you actually gradually move with the maturity. I will say that if you have a luxury to have more DevOps, go for it. But practically, as Neeraj says, that because of the compliance issue and also the technology-wise issues, you are not blessed with having all end-to-end integration with all technology which you desire, okay, which you are, or you think is the best architecture. If that is the problem statement, then you will not be able to achieve. You have to think this on a stage wise and then gradually move from one tool to another, or one environment to another, or one approach to another. That's the way you should be moving.
Right. Thanks, Madhavi. So one more question is, what is the difference between QA and QE, and how DevOps tools helps to achieve QE mindset?
I can take.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, I think see, quality assurance is something which is validating on top of the given set of requirements, right? But quality engineering, when we say, is about establishing the engine, the process to achieve the right set of goals. So it's not just about validating the set of given requirements to you, which can be fit for the purpose. But here, what we are saying is, right from the development, is the code quality right? Or basically, is the right unit test coverage is in place? You have the right checks. When you're building your runbooks for deployments, is the right set of standards being followed? Are my deployment test scripts or deployment scripts being rightly done? When I am publishing my test results, basically it has all got the right coverage. And if there are any bottlenecks as well, those gets identified. If I am talking about then continuous delivery, then my right set of logging for the production perspective, whatever we are going to monitor, those alerts are there, those controls are there. So I think there are certain key software quality parameters, which is more than just validating the user requirements, which also gives you the availability, the scalability, the reliability. I think those are the key factors which also comes in the quality engineering process. I think that is the key difference, that you're not just talking about being the testing of the given requirements. You're thinking from the bigger picture or the holistic view, breaking down into the components and then tracking each of the components from the quality perspective. So building that engine, I would say.
Okay,
Right.
I will answer in one sentence. QE is the advanced or a latest version of QA. Okay, that's the way we should be looking. And second thing is that we have been deployed, or we are working to find defect. Our main job is to find defect. We have to find out the flaws in the application and product. We can't forget that. So we cannot say that I will be just thinking about developing automation, or I was just thinking about doing the DevOps and monitoring the report and all. That's not it. We are first supposed to find the defect, and then the rest comes. So we are the latest version of, you can say, QA.
Right. Thanks. So going on to the next question, if the environment is not in our control, then which approach should we use for automation using DevOps? Very tricky.
Virtualization. I mean, that's the only thing I will recommend. There are many tools. In the past, I've used Lisa tool, which gives you lots of application and infrastructure perspective of virtualization, even the API perspective also. But there are many tools. I'm sorry, I'm being biased with my background. But I think only solution is virtualization. You can have your own harness. For example, you can actually, you have a message queues, okay, and they are synchronized. You make it as unsynchronized and pass your XMLs or JSON via them. So I think the best solution is virtualization.
I think I would suggest, and to add to this, there are two ways, because of course this is a problem statement which is across the industry. There are two options could be there. The first is you need to ensure, and that's why we say continuous testing. Whatever environments are there, you do your daily sanity check, because that will give you the point where the things have gone wrong. And when environment becomes unstable, you are the first one to identify that and get it sorted. So in that way, you have a consistent environment stability across the cycle. So that's, I think, one of the key factors. The other thing would be then, as mentioned, you go into a containerization approach wherein the things which are stable, which could be the microservice layer or a particular functional layer, and then you can have the validation or testing done on that, which will still support you to continue with some aspects of your testing till the time the things are stable. But I think there are certain approach with which you can control this in collaboration with your release team, development team, and all.
Great. All right, thanks. So one question again, going back to the security testing, is how can we maintain pipeline for DAST, as test scenarios can be different from project to project? So will it be separate pipelines for all the projects?
If there are different projects, the answer is yes.
Yes, correct. Has to be, no?
Yeah, if there are different projects, the answer is yes.
Right.
It has to be different.
Right. So again, it is similar to the earlier question, how QA ops is different than DevOps, and how QA can get a chance to work on DevOps, as in organization testers need to work only on testing activities, and QAs do not get the chance to hands-on for DevOps. Generally, DevOps position is filled separately. I think that's going to change.
Yeah, but still,
Yeah.
I mean, they are different. We should not be actually clubbing them as a roles and responsibility, because DevOps is they go post-production also, correct? They're continuously monitoring the production log. They are actually monitoring the important servers and all, which testers don't go beyond that. We actually go to the production and do a simple sanity check, okay? But we don't actually keep monitoring those in a day in, day out. So they are totally different. We are a subset of them. That's the way we should be looking. We should be understanding what they are doing in a day in, day out. If we do that, I think we are achieve our goal. We have whatever the tools they are using, whatever their strategies there, whatever the maturity level they have achieved, we should be collaborating them, and we have to be a part of them. If we are part of them, I think we will be having a better, you can say, QA ops role.
Great. Yeah. And Neeraj, your take?
I think whatever you need to support that, I think asking the right questions with the business justification why we need that, I think a lot of answers we get in the place itself. But I think there is generally we don't tend to increase the boundary. We are within that boundary. So if we can expand that boundary, understand what we need to support better, then I think we will get all those information, as what was Madhavi stating as well. You can get the logs, you can get the inputs as well, and then you can plan it out. So I think asking the right questions with the business sense, I think, yes, you will have the access and the information as well to support.
And other way, QA does lots of other stuff which DevOps doesn't do. QA will go to an end user and do a customer survey. They will understand product. They will do the comparison of different product which they are building in the competition also, which DevOps will not do. So that's a total different, roles and responsibilities.
Great. I think it's time for me to take the last question, because the questions are keeping coming, but just let me take the last question. Which environment must be considered for test automation? Dev, QA, sandbox, production, or we need any isolated environment to execute tests? Neeraj, you want to start?
Yeah, I would say definitely, because we are talking about DevOps here. The automation starts in parallel to your development team. You can't wait till it reaches to the QA environment. So it has to start in the dev, because as soon as my development team will get their code into the repository, will move to the required branches, my automation script should be ready to support whether they will not break anything when it moves ahead in the higher environment. So you have to start with the dev. I think the problem of instability, you need to factor that out, how you are going to automate your script, but it has to start in the dev. You can't wait for the QA or staging environment, because it will be too late, and it's not then the DevOps approach. Then it is a traditional software development process which you are following. So I would suggest we start in the dev itself.
Yeah,
great.
So balanced approach, probably they must be, the question must be coming where they probably practically will not be able to do in the DevOps. That's why someone is confused, and that's why asking why different environment. I think you need to have a balanced approach. The most of the portion is dev. So you have to actually portion, the moment you go later, you reduce it as your run, as your execution. If you do that approach, I think you're achieved your entire faster release cycle model.
Great. Thanks both Madhavi and Neeraj. It was a very interesting discussion, and I'm sure our audience would have a lot of information and insights from this session. Thank you very much for being with us here today. And for the audience, please do help us with the feedback post this webinar. We'll be getting links for that. And for any queries that you might have, you can please drop in a mail to mumbai@nascom.in. And if you prefer, you can write the speaker's name whom you want your questions answered from, and we'll get in touch with them. So thank you again so much, Madhavi and Neeraj, and all our audience for joining us today and extending the time a little bit. Thank you so much, and we'll close this webinar for today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Avanti. Thank you, Neeraj. Bye.
Thank you, Madhavi. Yep. Bye.
Bye.